This is The High Road with author and registered psychotherapist, Dr. Marlene Bishop. Dr. Marlene speaks to the heart of people who need to be lifted up and get out of the muck and mire that often accompanies major life changes, such as divorce or separation. Dr. Marlene will aspire to help parents of divorce to love their children more than they hate their ex, and to learn to take the high road. So please welcome the host of The High Road, Dr. Marlene.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. This is Dr. Marlene, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. And my co-host in this endeavor is attorney George Salley. Welcome, George.
Good morning, Dr. Marlene. Great to be with you. Good morning, at least in our time zone. Good day to everybody else.
Right, or night. It might be evening somewhere or night. Okay. I am going to go out of order on what we said we were going to talk about today. And so for people who have already seen the show description for today, we're going to go in reverse order. But I'm going to ask you a bit, George, about the right of first refusal and kind of have you explain it if you would. And I'm totally putting you on the spot. But explain to our audience what a right of first refusal is. And then I'm going to tell you all the reasons why I don't like it.
Okay. Well, oftentimes a right of first refusal is written into a parenting plan or can be ordered by the court in a ruling. And a right of first refusal is simply when a parent has the responsibility to have a child or children with him or her and can't, for whatever reason, something comes up. Before they place the child with someone else, they offer the child usually back to the other parent. And that's what's called a right of first refusal. Now, there are parameters that we talk about, whether a right of first refusal should apply for an hour or for a day or an overnight. Those things are all usually discussed. They can be negotiable. They can be assisted by a parent coordinator, or they can actually be written into an order. But that's typically what a right of first refusal entails.
Yes. Okay. And in theory, I mean, the purpose that it was intended to serve is fine. But you and I know that people do stupid things with whatever we give them to utilize that is supposed to be helpful. They will use it in ways that are not helpful. And I'm going to share a few instances of things that have happened and ask you to comment on them. But the first thing I had happen, well, not the first, but one of the things I had happen, one of the first bigger things that caused me to realize that a right of first refusal was maybe not a good idea was a mom who told me that the parents had agreed on a 4-hour right of first refusal. And like you said, the time frame might be overnight or all day. You know, if it's 8 hours, you're working on a Saturday and you can't watch the children. You ask the other parent first. That makes sense. Okay. But this mom informed me that the parents had agreed to a 4-hour right of first refusal. Well, I checked with dad. Sure enough, they had. He had no idea what it meant or what he was getting himself into. And next thing I know, and mind you, there were boys 8, 10, and 12, I believe, or it might have been, yeah, I think anyway, around those ages, you know, late elementary school, middle school ages. I think 2 were in middle school. And so dad, who was a manager at Target, goes into work at 8 o'clock on a Saturday. And mom drives by and sees that his car is there. And he was the manager. He was in writing the schedule for the next week. So at 12, mom drives back by. She walks in. He's walking out as she is walking in. to leave and go home, but it's 12 o'clock. And she looks at her watch and she said, it's 12:01 or whatever it was, 12:03. I'm going to go get the boys. You have violated the right of first refusal, and I'm going to go get the boys. And she goes out and or goes over to Dad's house, walks in, tells the boys to they were still in pajamas and eating bowls of cereal, watching cartoons on TV, as boys that age do on a Saturday morning. And she said, get dressed, put your bowls in the sink, we're leaving. And by the time they left, Dad had gotten home. Now, the real harm there is on Monday, I get a call from the middle school saying, it was the school counselor, saying two of these boys were in there and wanted to talk to me. And so I went over on my lunch hour. I said, have them in the office at noon. I'll be there. I have a free lunch hour. I went over, walked in to meet with them. One of them starts crying. The other says, do something about our mother. And what had happened is they had tickets to a monster truck show that night. And with Dad, and because Mom came and got them, and Dad wasn't going to make a scene or call the police, so he just let them go. He wasn't happy about it. And the boys weren't happy about it. But again, you almost have to make a scene sometimes to enforce some of these things. But technically, she was right. But tell me if you think there was anything right about that situation.
No, and typically I think a judge is not going to find the behavior of the parent to be appropriate. And a lawyer, of course, is going to use that behavior as evidence that that parent is incapable of placing the needs of the child ahead of his or her own needs.
Mm-hmm.
And because the children need to be left out of the middle of things. And obviously, this parent did not do that.
Right, right. And she created some very upset boys. And, when you've got a middle school age boy crying the minute I walk in, I mean, that's just not that common. And so, that shows you how upset 2 days later they were at missing their event. And I
Mhm.
don't blame them. And that's not the intent of a right of first refusal. Plus, the reason I like to share that story in particular is this is why you don't have a 4-hour right of first refusal. For those parents out there who are just hell bent on having a right of first refusal, let's at least make it a reasonable time, 8 hours, overnight, something like that, but not 4 hours. I mean, I can kill 4 hours just going to a couple of stores and, maybe the mall. But anyway, that's not the intent. And then the next story I'll share, which isn't quite as egregious, but then again, to this mom, it was the parents had an 8-hour right of first refusal. She was going to work all day, so she did the right thing and offered the time to Dad. She gets off at 5 o'clock, texts him, I'm on my way to pick up our daughter. And Dad says, oh, we came to Denver. We'll be back at about 11 o'clock tonight. Do you want me to just keep her overnight? And for those who don't know, where I live is about an hour from Denver. And so they had gone to some event in Denver, unbeknownst to Mom, who had parenting time, but was following the right of first refusal and playing by the rules. And next thing you know, Dad has taken off with the kid. They're not going to be back till late that night. So I'm going to let you comment on that one. That's not the intended use of it either, is it?
No, not at all. And of course, that kind of behavior is going to precipitate some sort of retaliation on the part of the other parent. It might be going to his or her attorney and saying, you've got to do something. This is being abused. It was not the intent to have the children interrupted from their normal parenting time for hours on end. So
Right.
again, we're going to have this information brought to us by our client, and our client's going to say, do something. And so
Right.
we can start out very gently, like contacting the other attorney, contacting a parent coordinator if there is one on the case. We can escalate from there and go on all the way up to a contempt citation. And I really don't like contempt citations. I feel about contempt citations, I guess, the way you do about rights of first refusal. They
Yes.
really often do more harm than good.
Right. Right. They really do. And I mean, the message is do what's right, but don't abuse it. I mean, we have such a thing because it's really what you should do. And that's what I hear judges nowadays say to parents is I'm not going to order it. You should do it because it's the right thing to do. But I won't order it because someone's going to do something stupid with it. And they don't always put it that way, but they will say someone's going to misuse it or abuse it. And
Mhm.
they do. And like in that case, the dad who took off and went to Denver for the evening should have let mom know when he took the child. We have something we're going to in Denver this evening. We need to leave at about 3 o'clock. Do you want me to drop her off somewhere else at 3, like a friend, family member, neighbor, coworker, somebody? Or do you want to just have someone else watch her? But he didn't do that. He just took off with her when the time came that he needed to leave town. And they just don't work that way. I mean, it's not intended for the right of first refusal to work that way.
No, absolutely not. And I mean, I see your point about why sometimes it's more trouble than it's worth. Uh,
Yes.
but I think parents are going to continue to want a right of first refusal.
Hmm.
The issue really is defining the parameters of the right of first refusal, whether it's an overnight or 8 hours or what the drop off points are, things like that. Um, but I see your point about it being more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah, sometimes it really is, you know, um, and it tends to cause a lot of upset with both parents and children. And, children get upset too, like the boys who were looking forward to going to the monster truck show. They had to miss that, and then parents wonder why the kids are upset with them. And it's like, well, because you're not reasonable, you know. And like you said, well, you said it perfectly. That's an example of not being able to place the child's needs above your own,
And I
you
think
know.
parents, they need to remember that they are the parent and so forth. And so there are going to be times when the parent, I'm sure, uh, denies the child what a child wants. That's part of being a parent.
Mhm.
Um, but to blow up a planned activity like that is not appropriate. But it's not appropriate for dad to plan that and go deep into the night without having informed mom to begin with either.
Right, right. That's where you don't accept it unless you can have the child available when the person gets off work.
Right, right. And so they've both committed faux pas, I guess, as to the
Yes,
exercise of the right of first refusal. And
right,
so then we're off to the races as one escalate and go to their attorney and say, file a contempt citation or do something. So really some thought on the part of the parents going into it is really called for. And if it's exercised, and again, um, loving your children more than you hate your ex, you need to be sensitive to the children's needs and how they would be affected by the parents squabbling over that time of right of first refusal exercise.
right, right. And that is exactly right because that is nothing in my mind but spite. That is one parent just being spiteful towards the other. It's not placing your children's needs above your own. And then the last story I'll tell you quickly, last and worst, in my opinion, was two parents who had agreed to a 5-hour right of first refusal. Not sure how they got to 5 hour. That was not what I had recommended, but in mediation, they agreed to it. And, a school day is more than 5 hours. And
Sure.
so every day that mom had the child, the dad would call the daycare where the child went before school and after school and find out what time, and especially on the weekends too, when there wasn't school. God forbid if mom dropped her off and left her there more than 5 hours. But what the dad would do is call the daycare every day that mom had the child and find out what time mom dropped her off and what time she picked her up to make sure that she didn't violate the 5-hour right of first refusal. And I finally had a conversation with the daycare director saying, "Can you help me here? Because I have to have my staff stop taking care of other children to go look at this sign in, sign out book for this guy and tell him what time mom signed the child in and what time she signed her out." And that's ridiculous. So I'll
Um,
let you comment on that one, but that's stalking to me. That's stalking.
well, it really is, and I don't know how to respond to what would be the appropriate behavior for the parent who wasn't engaging in those behaviors, and
Right.
because they feel helpless or
Yes.
concerned, upset, and want some sort of remediation of the behavior of the other parent. And so the question becomes, where does that remediation come from? Does it come from a parent coordinator decision maker? Does it come from going back to court? How does that get resolved? And
Hmm.
so we're going, as attorneys, we're going to try to highlight the inappropriate behaviors of the other party and how appropriate and victimized our client is by those behaviors.
Yes. Yes. Right.
But
And,
more importantly, the child is becoming victimized by those behaviors.
yes. And that's where my role comes into play. And that's why I make my case for people utilizing a parenting coordinator, at least just for the first year that you're carrying out this new order. Because then something like that will come up within the first year, most likely. And I or somebody in my role can walk you through it and explain, oh, this is not how this works. Here's what you need to do to remedy it. And then you don't have to file contempt because both you and I see contempt as a last resort.
I think absolutely contempt is the last resort. And again, I stand by my statement parents don't litigate their way into a healthy co parenting relationship.
No, no, they don't. And so anything short of continuing to litigate is best. And, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say something you might not like, George, but I think you're going to agree with me. This is where the attorneys writing the plan well in the first place helps a lot.
Oh, there's no question about it. The original drafting is critically important. And usually the attorneys will exchange copies of a draft and say, hey, what do you think? Or are there any concerns you have? And so that's
Oh,
typically very helpful if the attorneys have that kind of communication with each other.
yes, yes, I absolutely agree. A little preventive maintenance goes a long way for sure.
No question about it. And it's a lot easier to prevent the problem than to try to correct it after it
Fix
arises.
it. Yes, I totally agree. Well, it's time to take a quick break, so we will do so. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Now we're going to get into the real meat of what I want to talk about today, and that is children going, and when I say children, it's usually teenagers on this one, going from household to household and simply gossiping. And there is a time to listen to your children, and there is a time not to. And when you have a sense that your children are just trying to get attention, it's time to stop letting them do that. And there's several things that parents can do to put a stop to that. But really, I think the best is to sit down, either parent and child, or bring them to me. I'll talk to them. Because then you're not the bad guy. And just say, if something's really wrong and something's really going on, let me know. But otherwise, you're not a spy. I don't need you to come back here and tell me everything, especially what you think's going to bother me. But what we do, George, is we give kids so much attention for doing that. And I mean, I had a mom. There's always a story here, right? I had a mom a couple weekends ago, within 10 minutes of getting in the car with the kids to drive an hour away, within 10 minutes, she's texting me. And she had like 3 or 4 things that the kids had told her. And she was asking, is this true? Is this right? Is this accurate? Did you guys talk about this? What do you think about that? Within 10 minutes. And it wasn't one thing. Like I said, it was like 3 or 4. And it's like, that is not healthy. And I would love to know, I'll never know. I would love to know whether they got in the car and mom started grilling them, like, how'd it go? Where'd you go? What'd you do? Was your dad there the whole time? Or whether they get in the car and start saying, you know what? You know what dad did? You know what happened on the playground? I mean, I'd love to know. I'll probably never know. And it may be a mix. Like, it might start with a parent grilling them. And next thing you know, you don't have to ask them a thing. They're going to get in the car and say, you know what dad did? You know what happened? I'm going to let you take it from here. What do you think?
Well, I think they're going to end up with a mess on their hands, and children who are insecure with both parents I think it's going to hurt their development, their ability to be uh, separated, to individuate from the parents. Uh, it's a time for them to do that and not be either parent's spy or reporter,
Mm-hmm.
because the child is going to become, I would speculate, confused as to what his or her role is in the family relationships.
Yes, right. Because then they start thinking they are little spies. And it's just not healthy. And they'll start doing it both directions. And, I've had parents on that other end, if you will, when the kids start doing that with them, because it works in this household, so I might as well try it in this household. I've had parents in the other household say, okay, where is this coming from? We're not going to do this. You don't need to come back here and report to me about what your mom or your dad is doing. And then I've had other parents just embrace it and perpetuate it and make it worse. You know, that, well, how that happened? Who was there? Well, what happened? Well, you need to let me know what happens next time. And next time the kid walks right in and starts blabbing. And this isn't healthy.
No, I think it's particularly possible for those types of behaviors to flourish when there's a new step parent or significant other involved.
Mhm.
And then we're just off to the races. The children are being used as pawns and they're being misused. Uh, Actually, I think it's a form of abuse to put the children in that situation.
Mhm. Mhm. I do too. I really see it at that level of actually being abuse. I do. I think that's emotionally abusive behavior. And I know there's parents out there right now that are probably rolling their eyes at me because I'm saying that, but I do feel, I mean, what we do to our children to put them in the middle is awful.
Well, and I wonder if parents believe that their children are actually going to be called into court and testify, because typically they're not. The judge
Mm.
is not going to permit that. So, the recruiting the child to be the soldier for one parent or both parents
Mhm.
is has to be harmful to the child. I mean, it has to
Absolutely.
be confusing
Mhm.
and puts them in a role. Do I behave this way all the time? Do I behave this way just this one time? Uh, do I behave this way more toward dad than mom, or more toward mom than dad?
Mhm.
It creates a mess, I think, emotionally for the child. And then the parent is upset because the child is upset. A parent would come to my office and say, Junior is crying all the time that he or she has to go to mom or dad's, and we're asked to fix all that through the
Mhm.
court process, and it just doesn't work.
No, no. And when you said one parent or both, that made me think of something that I often say to parents. If they are the one receiving the information, I ask them, do you think if your child is telling you what's happening over there, they're going over there and telling them what's happening here? And I can't believe how naive some parents are that they have either A, never thought about it. That one blows me away. Or B, they are so naive to believe that, no, I believe my children are only telling me what happens over there because they don't like being there. Well, that's what they're telling you. But how do you know they aren't telling the other one the same thing? I mean, kids can be very convincing because they know what you want to hear.
And manipulative. It teaches them to be manipulative, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And then add to the mix, I'm going to complicate this further. Add to the mix grandparents. We already have step parents involved often, not always, but often. At some point, there will be a step parent type figure, a boyfriend or a girlfriend or some kind of significant other for each parent. But then you also have grandparents and well-meaning friends, people like that who get involved in this and get in the middle of it and the thick of it. And, yeah.
Well, and then I see cases where friends become enmeshed in the situation and then they're dragged into court. They really resent it.
They
It
do.
destroys the friendship oftentimes. So it's just a mess. Parents need to think about the impact of those behaviors on the child. The child has to be confused, uh, probably scared a little bit, and wonder, where do I fit in all of this?
Right. Right. I had a 10-year-old, to that your point about being scared, confused and scared. I had a 10-year-old recently tell me that the night before he's going to go back to one parent's house in particular. He said it's a little bit both ways, but it's much more towards one parent. When he knows he's going back there, he can't sleep the night before the exchange day because he knows when he gets in the car that both that parent and that parent's new spouse are going to start grilling him. He knows it's coming and he can't sleep. And he's like, I want to tell him stuff because I want them to leave me alone. But if I do, I feel bad. And if I don't, then, they usually just keep at it until I tell him something. And he's even admitted he makes stuff up just to get them off his back. Then he worries that he's going to be found out. I mean, it's just so unhealthy what some of these kids are put through.
Yeah, I think that's true. And what I see is a parent coming to me as a client and saying, fix this or stop this. And a judge is not going to monitor speech from the parents. A judge is really not going to have much capacity to keep the parents from really, I don't want to use the word destroying, that's too strong, but upsetting their children tremendously.
Yes. Well, and sometimes it does destroy the children. And mentally and emotionally, it's not healthy for them. This same little boy went to his school counselor, and the school counselor actually ended up calling the Department of Human Services, is what we have here. But Child Protective Services, what most people think of as Child Protective Services, because the little boy was so distraught.
And what happened from Child Protective Services? What was the outcome?
Well, and they are actually still involved and still investigating. When I said this just happened the other day, it literally just happened the other day. So I don't know what they're going to find. And that's a whole other, in fact, we could do a show on that topic alone. What happens depending on how it goes? Because sometimes things are dismissed and rightfully so. But sometimes things are dismissed and shouldn't be. And then sometimes findings are made, and rightfully so. And then sometimes findings are made that shouldn't be. So yeah, that's a whole topic all its own.
It is, and the idea of parents utilizing their children as messengers,
Hmm.
as spies. I mean, just using the children for purposes that exploit them.
Hmm.
It's got to be unhealthy for the children. It has to
Yes,
be.
yes, yeah, it is. I mean, we all know it is. We all know it is.
And
Yes.
so I don't know how we train parents to treat the other parent as they would like to be treated, given the reverse circumstances. But
Well, can I share?
yeah, please
I,
do.
I, I don't want to interrupt you, George, but just this morning, I enrolled in a conference, an online conference for, I'll give the organization a plug because I'm very actively involved in this organization, but it's the Association of Family and Conciliation Courts. And I am actually the Colorado chapter's president this year. And I'm not saying that to toot my horn. I'm just saying I am really passionate about this organization. And they are having a fall conference in November virtually. And one of the sessions that I enrolled in is about this very topic and addresses this very topic. So I will come back and talk to you about that and tell you what I learned.
That'll be exciting. I'll look forward to it.
Yeah, because that's the $1,000,000 question, you know. And going back to grandparents and step parents and people like that. Well, and also to answer your question, I don't know that I quite answered your question, but this is where I truly believe that, and I think this is what the session is going to be about, that parents are not getting enough post-divorce education, because that's the title of it, is how much post-divorce education should co-parents have? And, you know, some jurisdictions have 2 hours, a 2-hour class, some have 4, some have 8, some have, you know, a few weeks of a class that you have to go to. But they obviously are not getting enough, is my thought. They're either not getting enough or they're not learning enough, they're not listening, they're not putting into practice what they learn. And so I think that's where it becomes important, even if for a brief period, you know, 6 months, a year, preferably 2 years as a standard appointment, but to have a parenting coordinator who walks you through this. I just think it's really necessary.
I think it's critical, and
Mhm.
most parents at the termination of the divorce that I've worked with, they're upset, they're hurt, they're sad, they're grieving, they're in the recovery process somewhere in terms of grieving,
Mhm.
and yet we have to tell them, you know, you're going to ruin your children if you keep up these behaviors. Now
Yeah,
we can go back to court and the judge can give everybody a lecture and send you on your way, and then you revert to the same old behaviors. And what, you're going to
right.
go back to court time after time after time? That's just unreasonable. And so the
Mhm.
alternative, I guess, is for them to change their behavior.
Right. Right. And I have parents, this is the one that I wish they would change the most. I have parents who say, "But the child brought it up." Hey, kids are going to bring up all kinds of things that they don't need to know anything about. Like, what's incest? Okay, are you going to tell them? I mean, maybe, depending on their age. But my point is, kids bring up a lot of things that they don't have any business hearing about. And you, as a parent, have to guide them and not use it as an excuse to share adult information and to condone them knowing those kinds of things and talking about those kinds of things. And, you know, they've got to learn from us. But if we don't have the parents guiding them in the right direction, if we have parents who are using the fact that they asked as an excuse to share inappropriate information, I mean, no wonder we're in a world of mess.
Well, and I think we need to educate our parents through the divorce process
Hmm.
about the parenting issues. I'm a huge fan of a mental health professional on the case in some capacity. I
Hmm.
think it's very helpful. I think it's much more conducive to a positive outcome, to amending the behavior of the parents, than simply running back to court and saying he said, she said, and so forth.
Right, right. Because that's the alternative, and that's not the best solution for sure, for sure. And I've got a little bit more to say about that, but I'll wait until we come back because it's time to take another quick break. But some further thoughts on that when we come back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. I said I had a little bit more to say about that last topic, but you were talking about, our options being to figure it out on your own or land back up in court again. And we don't want to land there. We would rather figure it out. But I'm going to go back to something you said earlier and that you've said many times and that I'm going to repeat many times. And that is, two people have never litigated their way to a healthy and effective co-parenting relationship. It has not happened. And when you talked about, well, we could go back to court, yeah, there's your options. Figure it out, get some help, or go back to court. And litigating is never the best answer. And people don't get that courts do not want to deal with this. And I'm going to give you an example, and this is a great segue back into the topic of grandparents and step-parents and collateral people on a case. I had a grandparent write me a very well-written white paper about parental alienation, and his points were kind of that the court isn't addressing it effectively and mental health professionals aren't dealing with it effectively and stuff like that. And what I told this grandfather, and what I have told lots of people, is the courts do not want to get involved in these types of this minutia. Let's just call it what it is. The minutia of your day-to-day lives. They don't want to get involved. They're not going to get involved. I mean, they will if they have to, but then it's not going to be pleasant. It's not going to be pretty. You're not going to like what you get. And so I'm preaching to the choir on this one. You're the attorney, but I mean, explain to people what it's like. Put your lives in the hands of a judicial officer who hears 2 hours of your lives.
Well, that's true. He or she hears a couple hours of your life. You mentioned grandparents and step-parents. They can be heroes or villains, depending on what they're doing. But the court experience for most people in domestic relations cases is unpleasant. It's scary. They often end up frustrated with the ruling. The ruling is not what they expected or wanted, but that's what they're going to live with. And so if more control over their own lives, they're going to need to stay out of the courtroom.
Amen. Amen. That's a mic drop, except we have more time. So, but I mean, that's a mic drop, seriously. And, people don't get that. Do you have to go to court to get your divorce? Yes, absolutely. Do you need an attorney for that? Yes, absolutely. After that, get yourselves a parenting coordinator or take some classes or whatever. If you can educate yourself, great. Most people don't. They either won't or just don't. And so sometimes I think forcing people to do it. And like I said, I'll come back after that conference session and tell you what the takeaway was from, if there is one, I hope there will be one, from this session about how much post-divorce education should parents be getting.
Yeah, I think, and the question is, even if they're getting exposed to it, are they internalizing it?
Right. Absorbing it, following it. Right.
Right.
Yeah. It's the old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So,
Well, and I think some very fine attorneys that really have enjoyed my respect through the years, they try to educate their clients on these realities. They
mm-hmm.
don't just run off to court and do things that I guess people accuse lawyers of running up the bill or what have you. They really try to counsel their clients on alternatives to just going to court,
Mm-hmm.
because they're so much more constructive typically.
Mm-hmm.
The court experience, people don't suddenly become nice and considerate and polite and thoughtful of the other person's point of view because they went to court. If anything, it's the opposite. They come out more frustrated, more angry, more determined that they're right. The judge didn't understand, the judge didn't see their point of view. And it's typically an unpleasant experience. And it's rarely an experience where people come out of there saying, I got exactly what I wanted. The judge saw it my way 100%. We just don't have those experiences.
Right. Right. Yeah, it doesn't happen. And,
The
I
other
think you're
thing,
the, yeah, go ahead.
from a financial perspective, I think oftentimes the parent coordinator decision maker is a lot more effective for a lot less money than running back to court.
Yes. And there's one of me, whereas there's usually two attorneys, you know.
Right. And they're at odds with what they're trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And they're prioritizing what their client wants, not necessarily focused on what the child needs. And
Right. Right.
so I've had parents say, well, I want you to talk to my 16-year-old and so forth. And we don't do it. It's inappropriate.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going to have the child be called as a witness, and we're not going to be co-opting the child to one side by seeing them, whereas the other attorney may not. We just don't do that. We don't have children come into our offices and play the role of some sort of crusader for one parent or the other. We don't do it. Judges typically don't allow it.
Mm-mm.
In very, very rare cases, a judge will agree to talk to a child, but it's usually a child who's probably 16 or 17
Mm-hmm.
years of age. Um, so if parents think the judge is going to take a child back into chambers and believe everything he or she says and act on it, and it's just not going to happen.
No. And often, I hate to tell the parents out there this, but it's true. Often, what happens is the judge takes them back into chambers, talks to them privately, and the end result is that the judge can tell that one parent has either coerced them or outright alienated them or somehow affected how they feel and what they think.
Yeah, I have wish I had a nickel for every time that a parent wanted the child to talk to the judge.
Yes.
Uh, but the judge, they typically don't want to talk to children. They feel that that's
No.
more enmeshing the children in the process, and it's harmful and will do more harm to the child than good for the resolution of whatever it is that's going on.
Yes, yes. Well, and along that line, one of my pet peeves, because I had this happen just again recently, but it's happened many times over the years. A parent will say, when you get to be an adult, I'll share all that with you. No, your children do not ever need to know about your conflict, ever. And I had a judge, I love telling this story, but I had a judge dismiss an adult child who had come into court and said, I'm going to have you wait in the hallway because I don't care how old you are. You don't ever need to hear your parents' conflict. And
Yeah, I
I
think
admire that. Yes.
that's much more typical as far as the attitude or the approach of the judge, what
Mm-hmm.
it's likely to be. Uh, in fact, the judge is going to look typically very poorly on a parent who tries to pull a child into the court process.
Yes. Yes. Like, what are they doing here? Who brought them? Why?
Absolutely. And do you realize the harm that you're potentially visiting on that child to bring them into the court process?
Right. Right. And I can't believe how many parents truly do not think about that or don't realize that. It's like, how can you not? And they'll tell me, because I'll ask them, and parents will tell me, well, the child said he wanted to. Well, no, that's where we say, no, you have no business being in court. Actually, this was just last night. I had a parent say, it isn't fun for it because we were with two kids, they're teenagers, and it was mom, but she said, you don't want to go to court. We don't like going to court as adults. You don't want to go to court. Because one of them had asked me about that, not for themselves, but just in general. Does the court allow kids to come and to have input? And I was like, no. And then mom, rightfully and thankfully, said, you don't want to go. We don't like it as adults. How or why would they in any way, shape, or form like that and want to go?
Yeah, I think that's true, and that's perceptive on the part of that parent.
It was. It was. Now, mind you, that same parent took an adult child last year, but that's a whole other story. Okay, we are out of time once again, but thank you, George, for being here and doing this with me.
Pleasure to be with you, Dr. Marlene. Always insightful and educational.
Well, we learn a lot from you, so thank you for your input and wisdom and insight.
My
All
pleasure.
right. It's a wrap. We will see you next week. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you've been watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll see you next week.
Tune in to The High Road with host Dr. Marlene and gain insight into how to rise above tough circumstances and learn the skills that will help you take the high road in your life, no matter what challenges might come your way, on the next episode of The High Road.